Thank you very much. We're going to jump right in. Obviously, this topic is can be a disturbing topic. We like to kind of give that little warning right off the bat. So scary stuff, right? Obviously, like I said, we're going to be talking about some topics that may make you uncomfortable. Some of what you just saw may make you uncomfortable. We want a healthy sense of fear. We don't want you going through life paranoid that you can't come to work and work and be educated and play and live in a safe environment. Statistically speaking, these are very rare incidents. Statistically speaking, you are in one of the safest places in the city of Columbia right now, being at the University of South Carolina. But I don't think that any one of you this morning passed through a checkpoint or went through a gate or crossed a drawbridge over a moat or anything like that. So we are subject to anything that an urban capital city has to offer. And quite frankly, if you're wondering what a shooter in an academic environment typically looks like, look around the room, look at the people you passed on the way in. A good number are inside actors. So we're certainly not immune to the realities of this. We look at criticality and frequency. These are infrequent events, thankfully, though we are kind of on an uptick. But the critical nature of what they are, what we're going to be talking about today, hopefully you will never need it. In all likelihood, you won't. But if you do, it will be the most important information that we could possibly share with you. So we like to kind of create a baseline, get everybody on the same page, make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, make sure that you're here getting information and education on what you think you are getting. In law enforcement, we conduct an investigation. We're trying to answer several questions. If any of you from the journalism school, it's the same questions that you're teaching your students to answer. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Those are the things that we try to answer. So as we kind of create this baseline of knowledge or foundation of knowledge, that's where we're going to start. So what is it that we're here to talk about? You saw on the title slide, active killer, you hear active shooter, active assailant. Essentially, these are all the same terms. I will say that the term active shooter is sometimes overused, especially in the media. It's one of those words that drives engagement and gets people's attention. So sometimes you hear about an active shooter. People sometimes refer to the shooting that we had here at USC several years ago at Public Health as an active shooter incident. It wasn't really an active shooter. It was a murder-suicide, not taking anything away from it. But we'll talk about what the difference is because it's important to distinguish that. The things that we're going to be telling you to do today apply to an active shooter situation. They don't apply to being held hostage in a bank robbery or something like that. What we're talking about is this, and the important parts are underlined. One or more subjects who participated in a random or systematic shooting spree, demonstrating their intent to continuously harm others. Their overriding objective appears to be mass murder rather than other criminal conduct. There are several definitions. The FBI's got a definition. DHS has a definition. Some departments have their own definition. We've stuck with this one that came about after Columbine for a couple of reasons. Some of those are underlined. It kind of is a pretty all-encompassing definition. What we're looking at really is an event where somebody is trying to commit ongoing mass murder. When we say random or systematic, you may show up at a grocery store and it's some public event, has nothing to do with the location, it has nothing to do with you. You're getting caught up in something that is, for all intents and purposes, a random act of violence. You happen to be going to the movie theater where the Batman premiere is, and there's a shooter that's targeting that location just because of the crowd. It could be something that's more targeted, more systematic, because frequently we see a precursor to workplace violence being domestic violence. That's what happened at Public Health. The only reason that that was a target was because the suspect was the estranged wife of the primary victim. And had, in many workplace violence situations we see, had she come across other people on the way there, other people may have fallen victim to that even though they had no connection to her. So we do want to stress, though, that this is an ongoing situation. This isn't a you're driving down the road and there's a tragic murder or there's an incident that's isolated to between two people who are having a conflict. We're looking at something that typically will continue on until there's some type of intervention. And then we're also looking at something where the true motive is mass murder. They're not there to rape people, rob people. There's no motive for financial gain. There's nothing that you can bargain because all they're interested in typically is that victim count, trying to outdo the last bad guy, trying to carry out some type of action over a grievance, trying to attain some level of notoriety. And fortunately, that's what we're usually feeding them in the aftermath. So when do these occur? Simple answer is all the time, around the clock. But we do want to give you some information. So according to the FBI, in 2021 at least, for the incidents that occurred that year, you see that every month of the year is represented. There's a little spike there in April and June, but that spike month sometimes changes year to year. But what we do want to show is that it's really, all year long. Incidents by day, again, you see, okay, a little spike there on Saturday. You see a little spike there on Tuesday and Thursday. But again, every day of the week. Incidents by time. Now, if you drill down to the location type, typically it's tied, if you're going to carry out your attack at a church, it's probably going to be Sunday at 10 a.m. If you're at a school, it's going to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. But unfortunately, as we see the venues kind of expand and you see schools and concerts and nightclubs and restaurants and grocery stores and all these places, it kind of fills the day also. So literally around the clock, these could occur. What it comes down to is what's the where, which we'll talk about in a minute, and when is that where open? Because what are they really looking for? If your intent is to kill more people than anybody's ever killed, if your intent is to try to get on the cover of Time magazine, like we've done a couple of times foolishly, then what do you need to make a big splash, make a big impact? That's not a rhetorical question. Yeah, you need victims, right? So when will people be there? So when we talk about the where do these occur? Again, the list of venue types has just become pretty exhaustive. Places that we kind of held up as if anything was sacred, an elementary school or a house of worship or something like that. Pretty much everything is on the table. Places that we would think that wouldn't even be a very good idea to attack has become targets. Police departments have been attacked. Military installations. If anybody's going to shoot back, it's going to be the police, right? And yet that's where some perpetrators have gone. You saw in the video we kind of got a historical recap of these are going back to decades to the clock tower in Texas and Libby's and everything in between. But what we see is that these are occurring all over the place in a variety of places. In almost every state. This is like a 20-year sample. You see, Montana and Maine, I think, have been spared, at least in that 20-year sample. The size of the circle represents the number of victims in that incident. So you see down here in Vegas, the concert shooting, which is kind of our record number of victims. You see, Florida's got some big ones. But what we want you to see is that these are happening in Middle America. These are happening in urban areas. These are happening out west, up north, down south, literally all over the country. Incident locations, so you see businesses open to pedestrian traffic, somewhere somebody can just walk in. But you see businesses closed to pedestrian traffic, something like a manufacturing facility where they have maybe access control or something like that. Malls, higher education, schools, government properties, military properties, healthcare facilities, houses of worship, open spaces, residences. You think, where can I possibly go that this won't happen? And unfortunately, that list has gotten pretty short. These can occur in educational environments, office environments. We see workplace violence manifest itself wherever the suspect happens to work or used to work. But that's not limited to white-collar type facilities. We see manufacturing facilities where an insider threat, somebody's been suspended, somebody's been terminated, somebody was passed over for promotion, and they come back into the place that days ago they were a coworker, a colleague, and now suddenly they're the attacker. We see public events where movie theater premieres, concerts, nightclubs, because again, what we're looking at with that when and the where, we're looking for a crowd. So where crowds gather, especially where crowds gather on a predictable schedule, that is a potential target if what you're trying to guard against is somebody who wants to kill a lot of people. Who would do such a thing? Who sits at home and dreams and schemes of how they can kill strangers, or maybe even worse, people that they know, people whose family they know in workplace and other environments. Who does that? It's easy for us to kind of rationalize or guard against the damage to our psyche to think that this is somebody we could know, and we like to put this kind of anonymous boogeyman up there and think, well, it's not somebody who runs in my circle, not somebody at my workplace. But it certainly could be. Now, statistically speaking, these are mostly males. We are talking about probably a white male if you're just looking at the numbers. But almost every year, every racial and ethnic group is represented. Every year, there's a female shooter. Last year, it was only 1 out of 60 was a female. There was a 20-year study where it was probably 30 out of several hundred. But females are typically represented many times in workplace environments. We like to kind of, again, attribute this to somebody that wouldn't run in our circle. We think, well, these happen here, they happen there. 12 represents last year's youngest shooter. So they're starting young. The year before that, I think it was 13. 67 represents the oldest shooter last year. So this is not something that's limited to youth. While certainly that 20 to 24-year-old male is overrepresented, these really are kind of spanning our populations. This shows the age of the shooter. Again, that middle group is kind of high. 19 to 34 is a healthy chunk. But you see, I think the year before last, the oldest shooter was almost 80. So it really is spanning. Again, we like to think of these predatory types as we're the innocent deer, and this predator is going to stand out in a crowd. This is somebody who doesn't belong where I frequent. Problem is, very frequently they are part of your herd in workplace and educational environments, and they don't always stand out so obviously as maybe the sinister grin of this wolf. Sadly, this is what we're usually dealing with. We're trying to find Waldo, and so this is not Waldo that I'm telling you to look for. This is Waldo. This is what you're looking for. But anybody see Waldo in the crowd there? Where are you pointing?
Holding a yellow box.
Here, why don't you point to it with that red button right there? Oh, not working very well. Here, you tell me where to. Is it?
Actually,
Oh, okay.
Here, she means. Yeah.
Oh, that one? Yeah, that's not Waldo. It looks like Waldo, though, doesn't it? So, he's got different color hair, no glasses, no hat. So that's not Waldo, but he looks like Waldo. That's the problem. Anybody else see Waldo? All right, oh, you think? Here, almost. That's close. So he's got a similar hat, but his hat's yellow. He's got a little facial hair, no glasses. But again, he looks like Waldo, doesn't he? Therein lies the problem. All right, I'll let you off the hook. If you look up at the top left corner, there's a table. Look at the corner that's pointing up, and what you see is a little piece of shirt. That's Waldo. And much like reality, that's about how much of Waldo we're going to have. We're going to have a little piece of information to try to predict who the next shooter is going to be. And it's going to be a very unclear picture, a very incomplete picture. And Waldo's going to look like other people in the population. So as the FBI and others have tried to build a profile of what an active shooter looks like, they've seen characteristics. It's very easy after the fact to take this list of characteristics, and hindsight being 20/20, to go back after the fact, after we know who the shooter is, and to say, well, look, check, 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 check. The problem is when you look at that list of characteristics, that list of characteristics applies to a lot of people. And we may not have even seen half the checklist manifest itself in this person. So when we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the difference between the Virginia Tech shooter who had an attribute of violent and dark themes in his writing? He had written some stuff that his professor was so concerned about that she went to the department chair and said, there's something wrong with this guy. She was right. But how do you differentiate that from Quentin Tarantino, who, when he was in high school or college, probably wrote the same type of thing? How do you say that, okay, well, this predicts this versus this is a characteristic that is shared by a lot of people who may not be going down this path. So we're not just looking for a needle in a haystack. We're looking for one needle amongst thousands of needles that are all in this haystack, and we're trying to find that one needle. And what it does, though, is really stresses the importance of sharing information so that we can try to put together a complete picture. How are these incidents going about? How are these attacks being carried out? Well, one thing I can tell you for certain is that time is not on your side. There was an article written probably 15 years ago. It was called The Stopwatch of Death, very ominous. And what they did is they took the attacks over the course of a decade or a decade and a half, and what they did some basic calculations, and what they found is that at that time, in that data set, on average, every 15 seconds you would have a new victim once the attack began. And we thought, gosh, that's terrible. And the worst case scenario in that data set was every 8 seconds. Every 8 seconds, you had a new victim in that instance. And then Dayton, Ohio came along, and there's a nightclub shooting, and there's a police officer outside the door of the nightclub on the sidewalk who had a 0-second response time. He was already on scene. He would have been considered to have been at the location because he was right outside the door. The shooting began inside, and he immediately walked inside, shot the suspect, stopped the attack, and in 25 seconds, you had 30 victims.
I'm sorry, how many?
30 in 25 seconds. So this stopwatch of death, while it changes every time you introduce a new shooting into the data set, what I can tell you with certainty is that time is not on your side. Things that we typically look at in minutes, like response time. Our emergency response time on average is like 2 minutes here at USC. We can't get there in time to save the day for everybody, because the question is, how soon did we know? How soon did somebody call 911 and let us know that there's a shooting occurring here at this location and we need to get there? And then we've got to get there. And then we've got to find the suspect. And it's not all doom and gloom. I'm not trying to tell you that we're not going to be coming and the cavalry's not on the way and we're not going to rush in and do everything that we can. But there is a period of time where the question is going to be, what can you do for you? Because you may be your only saving grace, because time is not on your side. We are also limited only by the imagination of the attacker. We're in this constant game of upping the ante, where bad guys are dreaming and scheming and coming up with plans of how they can carry out an attack that's worse than the last guy, so that they can get their name, this notoriety, this infamy. They're looking overseas for inspiration. They're seeing attacks being carried out by terrorists, and they're thinking, well, I could do that at my school. I could do that in my hometown. We're on the other side. We're trying to predict, okay, what's the next thing? What did we see overseas? What could happen here? What is our vulnerability? And we're trying to guard against those things. But there are an infinite number of ways to carry out an attack. Is the attack going to be a traditional one shooter walking into a school and shooting his way through the school, and as terrible as that is? Or is he going to come up with some creative means of making the attack more lethal? Is he going to be carrying out a sniper-type attack from a tower outside of an next to an outdoor concert where people don't even know where the gunshots are coming from, and he's basically just got one massive target that has been gathered there for his attack? Is the suspect going to dress up essentially like a member of a SWAT team at a police department and walk into a movie theater where they're premiering Batman with a character named Bane, and he's going to throw smoke, and some of the people who are there being victimized think, what a awe-inspiring theatrical event this is, that this movie theater, and as they try to rationalize what it is they're seeing, and then they realize too late that they are under active attack. We don't know what the next thing is going to be. The reason we say active killer is because it may not even involve a firearm. Is the attack going to be carried out with an edged weapon that is preceded by a vehicle-borne attack where they drive a truck into a sidewalk of pedestrians and run several of them over and then exit the vehicle with a butcher knife and try to finish people off like they had in Ohio State? We don't know. But we've got to be prepared for all of that and so much more. So Primarily in the U.S., our attackers are using guns. Typically, they're handguns. This plays into the fact that some of our advice is going to be a moving target, create distance, seek cover. The good news is that most of the time it's a crudely sighted weapon that is not very effective over distance, that's not going to over-penetrate through something like a file cabinet of papers and things like that. But again, we do have to be prepared for worse.
It's a long gun.
A long gun would be like a rifle, so a rifle versus a shotgun versus a handgun. We have some shooter outcomes. So this is over 20 years, according to FBI data. A large percentage are apprehended by the police, but over a third commit suicide. The thing to remember, to realize when we're talking about somebody who takes their own life or was killed by police, sometimes in a suicide by cop, or is willing to shoot it out with the police, is that they're coming in having placed no value on their own life. There is nothing that you can offer them or negotiate with them. This is not somebody who, this is not transactional. They've got a mission and nothing is going to stop them from carrying it out. They are true believers. Why would somebody do this? Why would you go into your workplace and kill your own coworkers? Why would you go into school and kill your own classmates? Why would you go kill innocent children at an elementary school? Very frequently, it begins with some sort of grievance. The FBI says that the pathway to targeted violence typically involves an unresolved real or perceived grievance and an ideation of a violent resolution that eventually moves from thought to research to planning to preparation and ends in the attack. So there's some light in this because frequently someone does not wake up and say, I'm going to become an active shooter today and go into a public place and carry out a shooting. This is decided over the course of days, weeks, maybe months. They're planning, they're preparing. Sometimes they're scoping out their sites, trying to decide what's going to be the best place, the best time. What am I going to need? I'm going to need to gather materials. This period of time leading up to it is an opportunity for us to win. The only way that we win is to prevent this from happening. The problem is when we look at prevention and how effective our prevention efforts are being carried out, it's difficult to count what doesn't happen. So what I can tell you with certainty is that we have almost certainly averted multiple crisis situations here at the university because people have shared information with us and we have been able to intervene. Everything from a Crime Stoppers tip that there's a student inside a classroom with a gun in his bag to a called-in tip from a roommate of a student who has a large cache of weapons in his dorm room to a family member reporting a student who had a very elaborate scheme to get an aircraft and crash his aircraft into a populated area. He had a pilot's license and could actually do that. To someone just being concerned enough about someone that they just didn't seem right, or they seemed to be going through something, and maybe days, weeks, months, or a year prior to us getting to this point, we caught them early with an unresolved grievance and could provide them mental health care, could get them on medication. We regularly receive, and when I say regularly, daily, we receive reports to our care team. The Scott reports used to be the BIT. And it doesn't have to be targeted violence. It could be a student who is struggling with mental health issues, is struggling with substance abuse, has an eating disorder. Maybe they are only at risk of self-harm, but it's still important that we get people the help. Now, when we screen these reports that come in, maybe we determine, okay, this is going to the threat management unit at the police department, or maybe it can't even go there. Maybe this is going to the 911 center who's going to dispatch officers and go there immediately and intervene on something. Or maybe it's something that we're going to have a soft touch, an easy approach where a resident mentor in housing is going to reach out to this person and ask if they need help. Or we're going to reach out through the counseling center or another resource that we have here at USC. The point is, there is help for people who need help, but we need to know that they need help. If you see something, say something. Everybody in this room has a responsibility as a member of this community to be willing to do this for your sake and everybody else's sake. This is being a responsible citizen. It's not snitching. It's not making trouble for somebody. It's not putting somebody at risk of not graduating. We have plenty of students who have been reported through this, have gotten help, successfully matriculated through the university, and nobody knows that we even gave them a helping hand. But somebody's got to care enough to see that, report it, and get them that help. And then in some cases, frankly, there are people, you see something and say something, that person no longer needs to be a member of our community, and that's for the good of everybody, including them. Maybe they need to be institutionalized. Maybe they've committed a crime and they need to face the consequences for that. But again, it's everybody's responsibility to embrace that. What we're going to give you today is a toolbox. I don't know whether your problem is going to be a Phillips head screw that needs to be screwed in or a nail that needs to be hammered in. We're going to give you a toolbox that can handle both. You're going to have to apply the tools that we give you to the situation that you find yourself in. There are an infinite number of ways these play out. What we're going to do is equip you, though, for what you need to do to improve your odds of survival, mitigate a bad situation if you find yourself in it. Our advice boils down to this: avoid, deny, defend. You've probably heard run, hide, fight. I've got no real beef with run, hide, fight, except that I think there are some nuanced differences to the words that I think matter. I don't want you running the way that I see so many victims run in closed-circuit television camera footage after an active shooter, where people are running without purpose and they're running around frantic like a chicken with their head cut off, and they're doing nothing to benefit themselves by actually avoiding the problem and getting out. I don't want you hiding under a desk or behind a curtain like we saw in Virginia Tech or we saw in the naval shipyard up near D.C. I want you to actually deny the suspect access to you as a victim. And then, if push comes to shove, you're going to be defending yourself using whatever means necessary. What you do matters. And the best example that I can give for this is Virginia Tech. There were two classrooms in the same building, Norris Hall, where one classroom reacted in a certain way, one classroom reacted in another way. There were very different outcomes in those two classrooms. Classroom one, almost every person in the room, everybody with the exception of one, was shot, many of them killed in that classroom. In that classroom, what we typically saw were students sitting in their desks or getting up under their desks, a couple of them frozen in fear, as you might expect. But the shooter entered that classroom and he walked up and down the aisles, shooting student after student as they sat there patiently waiting their turn. 25 people, a grid of desks, 5 by 5. He walked up and down every single aisle and shot all but one person in that room. This shooter was not a physically menacing presence. He was not large. He was not particularly powerful. He was not particularly skilled. As a group, they could have overpowered him. They could have offered up some type of resistance. And this is not about victim blaming, and please don't take it that way. But when you look at that classroom and then you just go down the hall to another classroom, what you see is a very different response to a stimulus. In that classroom, the professor recognized what he heard as gunshots, and immediately, without delay, without getting into this state of denial where he tried to rationalize away what that sound was, he acted in defense of his students. He went to the door, shut the door. He wasn't able to barricade it, but he was able to barricade it with his own body. He immediately told his students, go out the window. This classroom's on the second floor. The students were like, going out a window, jump out the window, I'll get hurt. He demanded, go out the window. Student, one after another, as he continued to encourage them, went out the window. A couple of them had minor injuries, sprained ankles, maybe a broken bone. The only person who died in that classroom was the professor, who continued to barricade the door with his body as the suspect shot through the door. His students, as they went out that second floor window, survived that day. Because what you do matters.
So they jumped from the second floor?
Yes, sir.
More than 10 feet?
Yes. Yep. So when we talk about avoid and why we're not saying just run, we want you to think about what it is that we're talking about. This is in many cases, a problem that maybe has just manifested itself in the moments of it starting. So you have no idea what's coming, and now you're hit with this tremendous stimulus of trouble. But sometimes we have some clues. Sometimes we see something that doesn't seem right. Sometimes people make us feel a certain way, and we think, maybe I shouldn't be here. We have a sixth sense as humans. We know when trouble is coming oftentimes because we're physiologically given a warning sign. Maybe the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Maybe you feel this feeling in the pit of your stomach. Maybe somebody just gives you the creeps. That sixth sense that we have as humans is fear. The problem is we try to repress that. We try to rationalize it. We try to come up with some palatable reason that somebody's making us feel this way, or we want to be polite. Whereas if we recognize that sign for what it is and then act on it without delay, without rationalization, you may not even be able to put your finger on what the problem is. You just know that something is wrong. So there's a great book called Left of Bang. It's a program based on a military training program, and it's very simple. Essentially, think of a timeline, kind of a horizontal line, and seconds are ticking off. Tick, 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 tick. You have this timeline. Well, at some point, you have an explosion. That's the bang. Anything on that timeline that comes before the explosion is left of bang. We want to live in that left of bang space, because if we know that the bang is coming, maybe we can prevent it. Maybe we can not be present when the bang happens. But we've got to be able to, like the cat, recognize, okay, something's wrong, and remove ourselves from that situation. If you can't avoid it, if we can't prevent it, we want to deny the suspect access to us as victims. He's looking for victims. Unless this is your estranged boyfriend who's come here and this is a domestic violence incident, the suspect is probably not all that concerned with you as an individual. If you can avoid, if you can get out, if you can evacuate, they're not chasing you out the building because they're concerned about numbers, right? They're playing the big game. They want a room full of victims. They don't want the one little rabbit that got away. They're going for the den where the rest of them are hiding. So deny the suspect access to you. Make yourself a hard target. It means we're not hiding under a desk. We're not hiding behind a curtain. We are building a citadel. We are going to proactively, aggressively make ourselves a hard target. It might mean moving furniture. It might mean taking some actual steps to make our door maybe not impenetrable, but certainly more difficult than the door down the hall. They have less access to us than somebody else, and maybe they'll move down, and that buys us a few seconds. It's actually pretty easy to barricade a lot of doors if you know what it is that you're looking for. First question you need to ask yourself, is the door open in, or does the door open out? In most commercial spaces, especially something that holds 50 people, that door will open out. The fire code requires that somebody can get out by pushing a door out, and the door can't be blocked up by a crowd. So in a lot of cases, that door opens out. In your office, your private office, it probably opens in because it's a smaller space. Something like a bathroom typically opens in. So when you think about, well, how do I barricade a door? Well, a doorknob like that, you can actually do it with a chair, if it's got an individual leg or something. The most sure way to barricade a door like that is to take something like a table and then connect it to the doorknob. So long as the table is wider than the door frame, you're basically connecting that to a table, and now the door can't open out because it's braced against the door frame with the table. If you see a door like this, a lot of times our bathroom doors almost all look like this. You have basically a little A hinge at the top. You can barricade that door with really anything, a purse strap, a book bag strap, a zip tie. This zip tie up here, this is a 175-pound tensile strength zip tie. You can buy it at Lowe's. And if you zip tie that hinge tight, then the door won't open. It'll open, maybe an inch or an inch and a half.
What are you tying that to?
The hinge up at the top of the door right here. So you see the little hinge that opens like that. If that can't open, the door can't open. An inward opening door, you can barricade in a lot of cases with a rubber door wedge. So maybe you don't have a bookcase or a desk or something that you can put in front of the door. If you can push this and kick it up under enough, and there's traction on the bottom to catch the little teeth, this is actually a pretty effective way. If you're looking, how could I attach a table to the doorknob? You can do that with something like paracord or, 3 zip ties. So really, if you teach in several, maybe 2 or 3 classrooms, you know where you teach and you know what the doors look like. So go invest $4, $6 on a couple of things and then just know how to barricade the spaces that you might need to know how to barricade. Don't rely on a door lock. Obviously lock the door if you can and then do something else. If you've got an office and the door opens in, if all you can do is push your bookcase and tip it over in front of it, then do it. If you can't push your desk, or maybe you can, then do it. If you can put a file cabinet up against it, do it. We want to make it as hard as possible to get in here because a suspect is not going to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get into your space when they can just walk down the hall and find somebody else who's easy.
Things you press, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like a crash bar. So if you have 2 doors, if you connect those 2 crash bars together, neither door can open. So a zip tie, that paracord, a purse strap.
Like I teach in a class that opens outside and is one of those.
Yep, so same thing as this. If you took a table and then connected that crash bar to the table, if it opens out, then you just need something to brace up against that door frame.
So you have to go outside and do that.
No, so let's say this is the door and there's normally a crash bar here. So that door would open out. So what you're doing is you would take this table, put it in front of the door because it's going to hit this door frame. You take that paracord or you take 3 zip ties, you loop it around the doorknob and then the table, and you're basically bracing the table against the doorknob. Now that door can't pull out.
The computer opens it outside though, they can just pull a knob and open it.
No, because the table is connected to the door. So whether it's a crash bar like this, there's always space behind the crash bar. So whether it's a crash bar or this kind of doorknob, you're just basically connecting something wider than the door to the door frame and then connecting that to the doorknob or the crash bar. And that'll prevent that door from opening from the outside. You would have to cut whatever it is on the inside.
So there's always space to pass a cord behind the
Yeah, there's almost always a little bit of space there. I haven't seen any that aren't. Yeah.
It may be hard to think about all this.
It is.
At that moment, so is it possible that the classrooms already have these supplies? They cost a few dollars?
No, well, I guess you could, but I would rather be responsible for my own stuff and know that I have it, because how many times have you gone into a classroom and there's no dry erase markers, or no batteries in the remote, or no laptop or monitor because somebody stole that, or, I would, this is kind of a what can you do for you. Now, the university does have, a lot of systems in place. We can talk about some of those things, but this is really this works for you at home. This works for you taking your family out to dinner. This works for you, at church or at your kid's school, or, if you share this information. Yes?
Are these resources that you're talking about additional locking because that door already has a lock?
It does.
Is it easy to break that lock?
Well,
I need to put all the additional.
It's not necessarily easy to break, but it could be compromised, or you could break this out and reach in, and depending on what the door looks like. So what we're trying to do is target harden. So 1 is none, kind of the 2 is 1, 1 is none. So if you pile on, I'd much rather have kind of a backup system to the if the primary one fails. Yes.
No, earlier you gave the example of, I think, Virginia Tech.
Yes.
So the preferred action is to run, get out of the room if you can, and not be trapped. This is
So if you can get out, not necessarily out of the room if you're going into the arms of the shooter who's in the hallway, but if you can get out of that confined space outside and create distance, yeah, absolutely. Up until this moment in time, there's not really been a potential victim who's gotten out that the suspect has then chased them once they've gotten out, they just they write that off as, okay, that one got away, I've got more inside. The caveat being, if this person is targeting you personally, if this, if you are victim number one and you're really what they're looking for, they may chase you. If this is a relation of yours or something. So if you can't avoid, deny. If you can't deny, we're going to have to defend. So these are in order of preference. If possible, get out and evacuate and put distance between you and the bad guy. If you can't, deny them access to you as a victim. If you can't barricade up, or they get inside of what you would barricade, then you're running out of options, and we're down to this. We're going to defend ourselves using whatever means necessary. There are no rules here. But remember, the predator is only the predator if the prey agrees to be the prey. So sometimes we've got to flip the script. You've got this suspect who, in all likelihood, this is not some specially trained, especially dangerous opponent you're going to be up against. This is a regular person, in many cases, maybe not that physically capable. So do we sit there, wait our turn, and become lunch? Or do we give them the horns and fight back? Well, I say we fight back at this point. You've got nothing to lose. What's going to happen is if you sit there and wait your turn, you have a very predictable outcome. So we're going to make the best of a bad situation, see what we can do to maybe flip it. I know that I'm asking a lot. This is not I recognize that what I'm saying is you have an armed suspect and you're not armed and you're going to go up against them and you're thinking you're crazy. What's your alternative? I've got 2 guns on right now. I don't want to go up against an armed. I'm not looking for a gunfight. And I certainly understand where you're coming from, that you don't want to go in there potentially, weaponless. What is it that's going to propel you across the line? I can tell you as animals, we're going to do one of 3 things. We're going to fight, we're going to flee, or we're going to freeze. So how do we take some control over these maybe semi-uncontrollable responses that we have? Where do we find the motivation to do what we don't really consciously want to do? Your body may be telling you, get up under the table and hide and get in the fetal position because that's safe. How do we swing into action when we know that what we're about to do is very dangerous? Some of you like yourself enough that you're going to do it because that's how much you like yourself, and you're going to do whatever it is that yourself needs. Some of you are going to need some other inspiration or motivation. How many of you have a kid at the house? Raise your hand. How many of you have a spouse? How many of you have a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister or a cousin or a cat? Somebody out there wants you to come home tonight. So if you won't fight for yourself, fight for the person who's expecting to see you tonight. When you think, what's going to propel me across this line in the sand that I'm going to be fighting against an armed suspect, it's the kid that wants to get tucked in tonight. It's the mom who wants the call tonight. It's the spouse who doesn't want to be a widow. And you're tapping into that for your why, for your motivation. And when we do it, that's why we do it. I know that I'm asking a lot, so what I'm going to do is provide you a recipe for success. I'm a foodie. I like to cook, so I like to think in terms of food-related things. So this recipe that I'm going to give you is, hopefully you never have to cook up this dish, but if you're fighting against somebody who's got a gun and you don't have one, this is the way to best possible outcome. So this recipe, it's important to distinguish what type of recipe this is. I'm a cook. I'm a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I don't like this, I'll leave it out. I'll put a little something in, taste it, okay, I need more salt, that kind of thing. My wife, she is an accomplished baker. She and I cook very differently. She'll ask me, what's the recipe for this thing that you made? And I'll think, I don't really know. I think I could make it again, or I could maybe jot down some notes. If you ask her for a recipe, she's got this neatly laminated card that's in a box, and it's alphabetized, and it's got very specific ingredients. And, I'm pulling things out like that and throwing it in the pot. She's taking a measuring cup, and she's like tapping it down and scraping it off and putting more and tapping it down and scraping it off. And we're talking precise measurements. because this is what she's making. What happens if I'm making this chocolate cake and it might call for flour and cocoa and sugar and eggs and oil, and I leave one ingredient out? Well, I'm a cook. I'm making shrimp tacos. I don't like raw red onion, so I'm leaving them out. But you know what? If I put the shrimp and the tortilla and the cheese and the avocado and the lettuce and the salsa, what do I still have? I've still got shrimp tacos, whether I left that ingredient out or not. What happens if she leaves the flour out of her recipe? Just one ingredient. She doesn't have chocolate cake. She might have chocolate pudding, some kind of souffle. But, so this recipe for success, this is a baking recipe. You've got to put all the ingredients in. Some of them may not be very palatable to your taste, but if you leave it out and you don't get the result that you're expecting, that's on you because you left an ingredient out. That's a long way of saying use as directed. Ingredient number one, we've all got it. We all have an animal instinct. We don't have to be the prey. We all have the ability to be the predator. If I brought a puppy up here and flicked it in the nose and flicked it in the nose and flicked it in the nose, even that puppy is going to do what? It's going to nip. Because even that puppy knows that it's an animal. We don't like to think of ourselves that way. We like to think of ourselves as domesticated, and we're drinking our tea, and we're going to Whole Foods and things like that. But deep down, we're all this. Some of us, this is constantly bubbling up, and we're having to suppress it to get through a meeting or to have a successful relationship. Some of us, this is buried way deep down under sugar and spice and everything nice, but we still have it. We all have this. So if you have that motivation, that kid, that parent, that spouse, yourself, whatever that motivation is that pushes you into action, you're tapping into this primal instinct to fight for your own survival. And then once we do that, we've got to get off the X. The X is wherever you are. Because if a suspect is coming in and he's going to shoot you on that X, and then you move from that X, you immediately become a harder target. Our propensity is to freeze, is to stop, is to, like a deer who's in the woods and they hear something they think is a predator, I'm going to freeze and maybe use my camouflage. You don't have any camouflage in here. So you've got to move, and then you've got to move, and then you've got to move, because moving targets are hard to hit. Get off the X, stay off the X. That X moves with you, so you've got to keep moving. One of my favorite pictures on the internet, you've got this blissfully ignorant child, you've got this defiant honey boo-boo, you've got everybody else, though, pretty much doing the same thing, right? So, you got, right? So, what are you guys doing? Oh, nice catch. Yeah, most people are ducking, dodging. So what happened when I pulled that? It was unexpected, right? Yeah, but I wouldn't hurt you. But still, you did what? You flinched, right? You ducked this harmless little floating frisbee, just kind of gliding easily and still ducking and dodging, right? Because we have this flinch built in. We have no control over this. You're either going to get hit in the face with the bat, or you're going to do what these people are doing and protect themselves from this threat to their eyes and their throat and their face, because we're built in to us this physiological, non-conscious response to flinch and to protect ourselves. So I used to use something more significant than that. I used to use stress balls, and they were still pretty soft, but I was just at law school yesterday. I was teaching, and I used one of these because I learned my lesson a few years ago, because there's a guy sitting out there, he was a law professor, but he looked pretty, athletic, maybe. And I kind of made eye contact, and I thought I had kind of telepathically told him that I'm going to throw this ball at you. And I thought that he had received that signal and given me like, yeah, I got it. And we were in a big auditorium, and I kind of had to sling it out there. Well, he had apparently perfected the art of sleeping with your eyes open. And he took it right in the face. And I literally, this past year, just got past that statute of limitations on that tort suit that it is the law school. The professors are all lawyers. I mean, he could have sued me himself without even going to somebody. So we're kinder, gentler. We now float, but we get the same response. So this flinch, this is involuntary. It gets a little bit of a bum rap because we'll go teach like a middle school class, and they'll go home and they'll tell their parents, oh yeah, they said if there's a shooter, then we should throw a book at him. It's like, well, yeah, kind of. I mean, that's not the plan. That's part of the plan, right? But this flinch, it's actually pretty valuable. You may have seen on the internet this kind of phenomenon where somebody will start out with like a paper clip, and then they trade that paper clip up for like a Bic pen. They trade that Bic pen up for something else, and they sell that for $5, and they take that and buy something else, and they trade it, and eventually, here's my Honda Civic, and they've traded up. That's what we're going to do. This flinch, it's a commodity. We're going to take this flinch and we're going to trade it. We're going to trade it for something more valuable. So let's say we get a little bit of a response out of a flying disc. Let's say we have something like a metal coffee mug or this little tin here, or I've got a little table back here. We've got chairs. You guys have lots of things, right? So if a little floating disc gets people ducking and dodging, imagine something that'll actually hurt. You got a nice water bottle there, that metal one. So if that's the response that we're looking for, and we've got Brent here, and let's say I throw her water bottle at you. What are you going to do naturally? That, right? So let's say you're my suspect. So point your finger gun at me, 9mm, 45, whichever one. Yeah, 9mm. All right. So who's got the advantage here? Him, right? The whole reason we're not poking people with spears and swinging swords is gives you an advantage, especially over distance. He can hurt me. I can't hurt him, right? So if I'm looking for this and I've got that water bottle and all I do is sling it at him, I'm trading that water bottle for a flinch. I'm going to trade that flinch for time. That time, it's not a lot. It might be a second, right? It might be a second and a half, maybe. If I hit him and really, maybe I daze him a second, maybe I get a couple seconds out of it. I'm going to trade that time for something even more valuable, distance. So if I can cause that flinch and just trigger that involuntary response, then I'm going to go out this door, I'm going to be gone when he comes back in the fight, right? So item, flinch, time, distance. Let's say this isn't a door. Let's say the only door is back there. Brent's between me and the door. Same scenario. Finger gun. All right. Bottle. I throw it at him. All right. I trade bottle, flinch, time, distance. But instead of creating distance, I'm actually going to close distance. And you think, why on earth would you run towards somebody with a gun? Because out here, he's got the advantage. Finger gun. Up here, not so much, right? Now, I'm not saying that all is well. I'm still in a fight for my life, but I've kind of evened the playing field. I've done something that seems counter to what I should be doing, but the same principle applies. That flinch equals time equals distance, and I've bettered my situation than what it was. We're now in a fight for that weapon. We're in a fight for our lives, both of us. Yes?
Does flinch mean, sorry?
Flinch, that you blink, you bring, yeah. So
English is my second.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Never
So
heard of that.
what these people are all doing, yeah. So and it's involuntary. So if I clap my hands in front of your face, you do that. That's a flinch. Yes, sir.
What if the flinch is the shot?
Is short?
Is the shot?
Oh, is the shot? Yeah.
You
Well,
do something and the person just shoots.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, if he's got his finger on the trigger and that's his involuntary response, you're no worse off. Because I'd rather go up against a flinch, non-sighted shot than waiting my turn for the sure shot, right? So, but it could be. And realize that this happens to us too. So that first bang is going to cause us a flinch. It's going to cause us delay. Yep.
So, going back to the recipe cooking, you
Yeah.
have to do stuff at the right time.
Right.
Right? So what is, in this case, the best things to do as like the shooter enter in the room? It's better to move like you said before, move
Yep.
the target or throw something to the
Yep.
what's the
So it depends. And we'll talk about two scenarios. Remind me after 3 slides, remind me and I'll come back and I'll tell you 2 different ways this could go. Okay? So after this flinch, here we are. If it's not clear, you guys are the mice. Bad guy's the cat. The mice have 2 things in their favor. What are they? Superior numbers. And they brought an umbrella, a pocket knife, and a fork. So we are evening the odds in some ways, even though, the cat's got its claws and size and things like that. A lot of mice, 1 cat. in almost every case, we're talking 99% of the cases, there is one shooter. If the goal is a lot of victims, then that means we've got superior numbers in almost every case. So that means we've got to leverage that. But also the mice have brought their umbrella, their pocket knife, and their fork. They're weapons of opportunity. So without incriminating yourself, who brought a weapon to class besides me? Got a couple of confident ones in the back. Who else? Nobody else? Everybody should have their hand up because, yeah, pencils. I carry number 2 sharpened pencils in my bag when I fly. That's one of my weapons of choice. Maybe it's your water bottle. You didn't realize you had a weapon of opportunity, but you're carrying one. I bet you got something in your purse that's probably good. At the very least, yeah, remember the lion? We're all predators, right? So maybe you just have Thunder and Lightning or Laverne and Shirley or whatever you call yours, but you've got personal weapons at the very least.
Is it legal to carry concealed weapons on campus?
Not a firearm, but you can carry a pocket knife or a taser or something like that, yeah. Or baseball bat in your office, or there's a lot of things you could have. So these weapons of opportunity, we provide you with some weapons of opportunity. Maybe you're sitting in one or you have one at your desk. You probably got the same state-issued stapler that I got. It's like 6-pound metal, streamlined stapler. The fire marshal requires that we provide you a weapon of opportunity in almost every public space, which is what? Fire extinguisher. So, that's a good flinch when you spray it, right? And then turn it around and thud. That's a weapon of opportunity. So, a lot of weapons of opportunity. Those cans of Coke back there could be a weapon of opportunity. It's really, whose hand is it in, and what are they going to do with it? That's what really makes it a weapon of opportunity. What do you think this is? Everybody's so optimistic. Everybody says birds. Oh, birds, beautiful birds. Nope, that's locusts. That's a swarm of locusts. Those are zombie grasshoppers. So, swarm of locusts. You guys can become a swarm with just a few seconds of preparation. So when you talk about in what order you do this or how do you do this, it depends. It depends on, are you caught unawares to where you're in a space and then suddenly the first shot occurs? Well, my order would be avoid, deny, defend. If you can get away and flee and not be there, do that. If the gunshot is driving you away from an exit and you end up, running into a bathroom and barricading, deny the suspect if you can, defend if you must. When you're defending, so are you caught unawares where this is just, the shooter is right here, he fires the first shot and will then turn around and grab the gun and you're in a fight for your life? Or is the shooter outside and you've barricaded up and you're hoping that he doesn't breach your office space or your classroom? If that's the case, the swarm is what we really need to get worked out. Because with just a few of us, we wouldn't even need this whole room. We can come up with a very effective plan to counter what could come through that door. So maybe we grab the fire extinguisher from the other door. If this is the only door and we know this is where he's coming in, you don't want to huddle up in the corner and be one big target that's hard to miss and he just pops rounds off into the corner. You want to be multiple points of opposition on both sides of the door. And when you come in, the swarm is simply this. If he's foolish enough to lead with the gun and that door opens and he comes in, the first person who can get a hand on that gun is getting a hand on that gun. And they're grabbing on and they're holding on, and that's all they're having to do is control that gun, because that's really where the death is coming from his standpoint. The second person is going to grab that other arm, and you're going to grab that other arm because that's really his other means of defense. And then maybe you have somebody who's squeamish and they decide to just grab a leg or something. You ever had a kid sit on your foot and you walk around, you got them, you're walking around like that? Well, imagine a grown-up sitting on it. Now you've taken away his mobility. But really, as quick as we can take these two hands and the gun out of play, we want the next person, somebody who's maybe willing to get their hands dirty, is they're going for the head. They're going for the head because that's where all the good stuff is, the soft stuff, eyes, throats, groins, whatever it is that you can do to inflict damage on this person is what you talked about a number 2 pencil. A number 2 pencil in somebody's eyeball, as gross as that sounds, that is how you redirect somebody's effort that they're trying to make to kill you, is to do something like that, or stick it in his ear, you stick it in his throat, or you stick it in his throat, stick it in his throat. This is not for the squeamish, but you are in a fight for your life. If you don't defend yourself, he's going to kill you. That's where we're at, yes.
So it's okay to poke the eye.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, reach in there, grab it, and pull it out. I mean, stick it in your pocket, save it as a souvenir. I mean, there are no rules at the point that somebody is trying to commit mass murder. And so, as quick as we can immobilize him, the better off everybody is.
When you grab the hand holding the gun,
Right.
should you pull it downward or is it a preferred?
Yeah, if you could, it's good to kind of go for your center of gravity. If you can grab it and tuck it in. You've got more strength here than he has out here. So, if you can, and then just hold on. If you can wrap your hand around if this is the barrel, wrap it around here. That's a good place to grip, and then maybe on his hand, you can do it like that. But it's going to be messy. I mean, people are flailing and things like that. It may not be a perfect grip or whatever. What you don't want to do is, try to stay away from the end of it, because that's where the fireball's coming. Yeah. Now that being said, we'll talk about that fireball. We've been talking about a lot of physical things. This is really a mental game. What we need you to do is to fill your hard drive with a plan, and a plan B, and a plan C, and a plan for this environment, and a plan for that environment. What we're talking about is, psychologists call this cognitive rehearsal. Basically going through these mental war games. You're coming up with a scenario, when-then thinking. When this happens, then I'm going to do this. And think about places that you're actually spending time and activities that you're actually doing. When I'm sitting in my office and I hear gunfire outside, then I'm going to do this. When I'm in my classroom and I hear gunfire, then I'm going to do this. When I'm walking to my car at night and I think that a creep is following me, then I'm going to do this. When I'm pulling up at the ATM and I see a suspect person over in the shadows, then I'm going to do this. And you can win-then this to death. When I'm out at a restaurant with my family and something breaks out, then I'm going to do this. When-then. If you're more of a philosopher than a psychologist, then the Stoics call this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You should give thought to tragedy, because you will hopefully not be caught unawares. Seneca said that the unexpected blow lands the heaviest. That punch you didn't see coming. That's where you get caught back on your heels, and now suddenly you're trying to play catch up. You've got to bring commitment. This commitment means that you can't be squeamish. It means that when you hurt somebody who is trying to hurt you, you can't feel sorry for them. It means that when you go to grab that gun and he pulls the trigger and it goes bang and it's really loud, you can't go hands off and say, oh, that sounded scary. It means that when you go to grab that gun and he takes one of your fingers off because you stuck it out in front of it and suddenly you're down to 4, you can't be thinking, oh, I'm tapping out, because he's going to keep doing what he's doing because he brought all of his commitment. It means that you've got to recognize that only one of you may go home tonight. Is it him or is it you? That's the kind of commitment that you're bringing. Now the question to ask yourself is, are you ready? Hopefully you're more ready today than you were yesterday. None of us should want this to happen, but if it does happen, are we ready? You actually got homework. Your homework is to go home and give some thought to this, to go back to your office and give some thought to this. Next time you're in your classroom, to give some thought to this. Look at the doors. Do the doors lock? Do you have furniture that you can barricade? Do they open out? Probably. Do you have that little hinge up top? Could you go to Lowe's and grab a couple of zip ties? Have you given thought to what is going to be your motivation and your inspiration when this happens? What is going to propel you into action? Are you ready? Are you ready to fight until the end? Are you ready to fight through adversity? Are you ready to plug your own hole? When you're stuck up on the 4th floor and we're trying to clear the building after the dust has settled, are you equipped to render your first aid to yourself? Do you know how to tie a tourniquet? Do you have a tourniquet? You can go buy a tourniquet at Amazon or something. There's a great class called stop the bleed, and it teaches you the basics of combat first aid. You know, we carry tourniquets on our duty belts when we're in uniform. I carry a tourniquet in all of my bags, keep some in my car, because the way that I am most likely to die in a felonious assault is blood loss. So I carry this for me. Now, I'll use it for you if I had to, but if you've got one and you're stuck up on the 4th floor and we're working our way up there, that may be the difference. You putting this on your own leg or your own arm may be the difference in you surviving or not. You don't have very long to render yourself aid, and then you don't have very long after that before you bleed out. Yes?
You said plug your own hole at the, you mean like?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, yes.
What if you're in a small room, like your own office, that you feel like the shooter might not even come to? Should you just stay there, or should you leave? Because if you leave, you're basically exposing yourself.
Yep.
You're putting yourself at more risk,
Yep.
but maybe for a greater reward.
So it depends. Are you somewhere that is truly barricaded and fortified? Do you have solid walls and doors? Do you have, is the door locked or barricaded well? Then yeah, maybe stay put rather than expose yourself to risk. If your office is made of glass, or your door's not really that secured, and you think that nothing is going on outside, or right outside your door is the exit to the outside, then maybe it's worth the risk of getting out. Because if you can get out, that's great. But when we talk about building your citadel, we talk about barricading yourself in an office. You're not defending against the Huns. Nobody's having to dig a moat or anything like that. You have to last for a couple of minutes, because if help is on the way, that's if, because again, has somebody actually called us to tell us that there's a problem? If we are on the way, we're about 2 minutes away. So you've got to be able to last till the cavalry gets there. And when we get there, we'll take care of the problem from there. But the question is, what are you going to do in that 2 minutes? So if you're hunkered down pretty well, and you don't, somebody's not actively trying to get in there, and you think, well, you know what, I feel pretty good here. Stay put. Get your weapon of opportunity ready. Have your plan for if somebody gets through that door, and then, maybe hunker down. Yes, ma'am.
So, I have a question. I've taught a couple of times over in Gambrell in like the 151, 152 type rooms that have
That's-
2 doors at the top and then stadium seating.
That's the big auditoriums with the.
The one across the way from the big auditorium.
Okay.
But it's like stadium style
Right.
seating. The instructor's down at the front.
Yep.
There are 2 doors at the back.
Yep.
And no doors where the instructor is.
Okay.
So just doors at the
Yep.
2 doors at the back. My question for you is there any thought about giving classroom-specific advice about how you should survive in this particular classroom that we could add to like 25 Live or something like that? To have a little note about this is the type of door to expect, this is the type of barricade to expect. Really specific to like the classroom you're going to be in, so you could prepare for the first day without having to physically see the room and know all that yourself.
So the problem, frankly, is we have like 300 buildings and probably thousands of classrooms. The doors are all different. The locking mechanisms are all different. Whether there's 2 exits on one side of the room versus another exit by the stage or back behind you, it varies so much that what we like to. It's a little better if we can say, here are your response options. Now apply these to where you find yourself, because there are so many factors that come into play. Is the shooter in your classroom? Is he one of your students? Is he between you and the door, or is he coming in from the outside, or do you have some warning that something's going on outside? All that plays into what you should really do. And I'm not trying to dodge your question, but it's just there's so many what ifs. What if this? What if that could factor into how you should respond to that.
I understand that it would be a huge undertaking, but
Yeah.
I know like when you pull up 25 Live, it has classroom specific information like the layout of the classroom or how many seats to expect or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think even something small like what type of door there is
Right.
and how you would barricade that door. I think it would be useful information
Yeah.
in terms of like what to have to even on a small level, just to know how to lock the door would be useful for instructors, I think.
Yeah. You having gone through this class do have that information, I would argue. Giving that information to somebody who has not come through this class is probably useless because they're going to look at that and not even know what the relevance of it is. This is really not a mandatory class. I mean, all of you are here probably by choice. I don't know, what percentage of the faculty do you think we have touched, Xavier?
Since you started coming up CTE,
Yeah, I mean,
early on, it was a high percentage of faculty.
yeah.
It goes out to faculty every year. We try to have it 3 times a semester or more, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we teach this type of room as often as we can fill this type of room. We go to departments and teach and things like that, and everybody's getting the same info. But I don't know that putting the information in a classroom means anything to somebody who doesn't know what it means. You know, they don't know what they don't know, which is, okay, it's an outward opening door. Okay, there's a doorknob. Okay, there's a crash bar. But what is that of relevance to somebody who doesn't know what to do with it? You see what I'm saying?
I think, and I don't want to be the person who suggests this, because then they might be the person who does it. But you know how there are modules, and I know you said this isn't mandatory, but sometimes students they are required to do certain modules before they come to class. So,
Right.
but then again, this is triggering, but then a lot of stuff is triggering that they have to do, like assault and stuff. So maybe they could have, I don't know who would be in charge of it, but like a module that has to do with that, and that's part of the things for their checklist.
Right.
We all had to take a module on bullying last year. I mean,
Okay.
Everybody had to do that last year, and it was long.
Mhm.
It took several hours. I think having this information available in that kind of format seems to be pretty useful. Of course, somebody has to define it.
We would not be opposed to that. So, frankly, I'm being recorded, but, you know, sometimes you faculty are the most difficult group to force into something like mandatory training. Because you're very self-governing. So if the provost or the faculty senate or somebody said, we'd like to have this for all faculty, we will provide that training for all faculty. Yes.
So if I have graduate students that are going to be teaching that may be interested in this, are there resources online that I can at least send them that can get something similar to what we're getting today?
There are.
They might be okay.
Yep. So a couple of ways that we share this information. So we teach through the CTE, primarily faculty. We teach through USCHR. Those are primarily staff members. But we also host a couple of classes throughout the year that are just public classes. And really anybody can come to these. Anybody can go to HR. Anybody can jump on when we teach at some outside event. But our website is sc.edu/USCPD, a very commonsensical web address for us. If you go there and then go into the search box and type in active shooter, it'll take you to a resource page where we have a trifold brochure that goes through avoid, deny, defend, what that means. If you're looking to share something with somebody that's as simplistic as it gets, there's that. The School of Journalism put together a pretty nicely produced video. It's about 4 minutes long. You can access that through School of Journalism, and I can't remember if we've got a link to that on our website, but if you email me, I can send you a link. It's on YouTube. It's a 4-minute video. If you're looking for something to share with your class on the first day of class when you're going through your syllabus, and you don't have to make it scary. You can just say, hey, here's the exits. In the event of a fire, in the event of. I also encourage faculty members to kind of get a sense of what you have in your classroom. You might have cops in your class who you don't realize are cops. You teach in criminology, but others might as well. And we have police officers who are in the MBA program. We have police officers who are in the MPA program. We have officers in a number of in the Masters of Education program. But you may have firefighters. You may have EMTs. You may have former military. Maybe on the first day of class, you just ask, hey, does anybody have any specialized training? EMT, nurses, military, law enforcement, and identify who they are and say, hey, can you see me after class? And then just recognize, hey, you know what, I've got somebody in this class who I can call upon in the event of an emergency. Maybe it's somebody having a medical emergency, a heart attack, but you've got a nurse or an EMT or somebody who's trained in first aid there. Maybe it's something like this, and you have a former military, off-duty law enforcement officer. A lot of us, when we go to class, we don't dress like cops because we don't really like getting into all that. when we don't have to. So we might just look like a normal student, like an old one, or in my case, but non-traditional. I'm sorry, not old. But we, you may have a resource in your class that you're not even familiar with, and then the 4-minute video that journalism did. That's a good way to introduce your whole class to, hey, this is kind of what the university recommends. This avoid, deny, defend. They now have an idea. So if you're going to lead them to the promised land, maybe they'll be more likely to follow you there if they know what you're talking about. Yes.
I'm really sorry, this is like very sinister thinking, but if you share that information with the class and then the perpetuator is one of the students and now
they know the plan, they have the playbook.
They're gonna do this,
right.
What about that?
Yeah, it's tough to guard against. The question is, do we let everybody in on the plan, or do we keep it a secret amongst us that all promise not to be active shooters? I may have just given the playbook to somebody. I mean, if we're being frank.
It's
now,
general. They
no, I
get
know.
it from anywhere,
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the stuff's on our website.
They do
yeah.
research, right? They read
Absolutely.
But if it's like specific to this room, then it becomes tricky.
Sure. And I would still argue that everybody having the information is better than nobody having the information, because really giving them the playbook is not a secret. But if they have the playbook, it may modify what your best response option is, but the principles hold true. Maybe it gives them, kind of a sneak peek into what you might do, but some of the people in the room may not be doing that at all, because not everybody has this. It's just kind of, it's a calculated risk. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask the business of the locusts.
Yeah. Right.
So this needs to be discussed with the class now.
Yeah.
Before it happens.
Sure.
It's okay to talk about that.
Sure.
If you have a plan.
Yeah. Yep.
You
Yeah.
understand over there. and
Absolutely.
you told me about Gothic
Yeah.
design and all of that.
Yep.
So they
Yeah,
take it.
especially if you've got maybe a handful of people in that class who you feel like you can really count on. Certainly bring your TAs in on it and things like that, because that's somebody who can also be a leader in that group. Yes, ma'am.
Recording the swarming and defending, what about pepper spray? Is that useful?
So pepper spray is certainly a useful tool in certain self-defense situations. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it in this situation. Maybe if you can spray them before they shoot you, and now they're at least having to fight you with their pepper spray in their eyes. I mean, there's some advantage to that, but definitely do not rely on pepper spray for an immediate reaction. Before I had a taser, we had pepper spray and batons and stuff like that. I probably pepper sprayed, half a dozen suspects in my career, and very rarely is it immediate. It's the fight is on, and they're going to continue to fight. They may not be able to see very well. They may not be able to breathe very well, but they're still very capable of. We all get sprayed as police officers before we start carrying our pepper spray. So I know for a fact that people can fight through pepper spray, because we have to fight through, we get sprayed, then we go through this obstacle course where we're fighting people and hitting people with our batons and having to aim a gun and things like that and forcing our eye open. So it is not a 100% type solution. But certainly if you've got an unmotivated attacker, somebody who is, coming up on you outside when you're walking down the sidewalk, I mean, it's certainly a good deterrent in certain situations. I just wouldn't be overly reliant on it in this situation.
What does a taser do precisely to the person?
So,
subject?
yeah, it depends, because, we say taser. Taser is a brand name, and actually it's called Axon now, but a taser is really a specific type of device. You have an electronic control device, which is, could be a taser, could be a stun gun, could be a off-brand type thing. Sometimes it's you've got a couple of little probes, and you might have 50,000 volts of electricity kind of arcing between those, and it hurts when you touch it. I mean, you'll recoil. If you hit like a nerve group or something like that, you can get an involuntary reaction. A true taser, like what we carry, we're shooting 2 probes out, and we're trying to get an adequate spread to where we can control everything. We're closing a circuit. So if we get one in your chest and one in your leg, from here to here, and then out and back, we're creating a circuit where electricity is flowing through, and it is going to create involuntary muscle contractions everywhere that it's impacted.
So temporarily disables the person?
Yeah, so for 5 seconds, if I shoot you with my taser, if I get good connection on both points and I get an adequate spread, I can get basically a neuromuscular incapacitation is what they call it. Everything is being impacted. I'm going to tighten up and probably fall down. And during that time, I'm going to try to go up and have somebody handcuff you while you're under power. And so it is immobilizing temporarily. Now there's a civilian taser, a non-police taser, that the voltage is a little different. The kind of the pulse rate is a little different. But it's designed to shoot somebody with it, and it's going to last for 30 seconds. And what they want you to do is put it down and let that person, what we call ride the lightning, and run away. So it's actually pretty effective at escaping a situation, a mugging or something like that. But really, we're talking about a very specific device, a very specific brand and model of a device. A lot of things that you see that people call tasers or stun guns, it might be a flashlight that just kind of shocks. That's not doing anything other than basically creating a little pain where it's touching. So it'll cause you to recoil. It might cause you to have an involuntary muscle contraction, but it's not necessarily going to incapacitate somebody.
It goes through clothes?
There's a certain amount of separation. So you can have a disconnect if you got really thick clothing or something like that. It might not make that jump, but it'll certainly go through your shirt. Yeah, it'll punch through your shirt and stick in your skin.
It's better than pepper spray.
Yeah, there's a quicker impact of a true taser from that if you get a good connection. Now, wires can break, you can miss one of the barbs, or there are certainly problems. It's still not a 100% solution for sure. Nothing is really a 100% solution. But they can be effective. Yes, ma'am.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
At what distance how far out can the person be and still be affected by a taser or a pepper?
It depends. So you have to look at the packaging and look at the model. So the cartridges that go into a taser, they'll tell you how long the leads are. It might be 15 feet, might be 25 feet. It depends on the model. Pepper spray, you have some pepper spray that comes out like a kind of a mist, and it gets all over immediately. You have a lot of it is a stream, so it's coming out like a super soaker squirt gun, a very specific stream. You get more distance, but you gotta hit it in the right spot or wait for it to drip down. You have like a cone where it comes out, or there are different models, so it really depends on the effective distance. I would say average for pepper spray, you're like 6 to 10 feet, somewhere like that.
And the number to call if we need to, what is that?
911.
Oh, this line.
Yep, 911. If you call from a desk phone, like if you were to go up to that cubicle at the front, dial 911 and leave the phone off the hook, then we would get a 911 call in our dispatch center on Henderson Street. It would say there's a 911 call from the Center for Teaching Excellence at the Thomas Cooper Library in this room number, and we would know where to come. If you call 911 from your cell phone right now, it would go to it's called Columbia Central, so it's the dispatchers that work for the City of Columbia and Richland County Sheriff's Office. They would get a 911 call, and it would not have your immediate location information available. It would just say there's a 911 call from your phone number, and they would try to get information from you. And there are ways that they could try to ping you to maybe narrow down where you're calling from, but it's not going to be very specific. A third option, though, is we have an app. Our app is called Rave Guardian, R-A-V-E. So if you don't have this downloaded, get your phone out, because this is one of the most important things I'll tell you today. Take your phone out, search in the App Store. You're looking for Rave Guardian, R-A-V-E Guardian. It's a blue box with a white outline of a shield. And if you download that app, and then when you fill out the registration, you use your USC email, that'll attach you to our system. That app has 3 main functions. One is you have basically a panic button in your pocket. If you can hit this emergency button. When you hit that, it'll say, do you want USC Police or do you want local 911? If you hit USC Police, it triggers the connection with us. On the receiving end of that call is the same person who would answer a 911 call at our headquarters. Our dispatcher will pick up. As long as you have done the permissions correctly, it'll activate the GPS on your phone, and you'll show up as a dot on a screen, and it'll tell us within like 10 meters where you are. Now, we're getting X and Y coordinates. We're not getting Z, so we would know that you were at this location lat long in the library. We wouldn't know what floor you were on. but we would certainly be able to narrow down, if you're either in 101, 201, 301, 401 in most buildings is kind of how it would show. We're looking down on a map. The person who answers that call is going to try to ask you, what you need. If you can talk and you're basically talking on a 911 call now, plus we have your GPS location. If you don't say anything, we're still going to send somebody to the location of your phone to see what the problem is that somebody just called for help. We'll treat it like a 911 call. The second feature of the app is you can set a safety timer. So if you're walking to your car at night and you think that it'll take you 10 minutes to walk from your office to your car, you set a 10-minute timer. At the end of that timer, when it's about to expire, it'll say, hey, are you okay? If so, your timer's about to go off, deactivate it. You put your PIN number in that you've programmed in. It'll deactivate the timer, and nobody knows that you used the app. If you don't put your PIN number in, or you put the wrong number in, or you let the timer expire, your phone will go into kind of an alarm mode. It'll let us know that you might need help. It'll let us know where you are, and we'll come looking for you. And then the third feature is you can actually text our 911 dispatchers. So right now, the only way to really call 911 in most markets is to call 911 and then you get the person. You can text, and that text message will actually go to the same person who would answer your 911 call, and it'll open up a two-way conversation where, so let's say that you are barricaded up and hiding and you got the lights out and you're trying to make it seem like nobody's home. You don't want to talk or make noise, but you can text and say, I'm barricaded in this room and I need help and you can basically go back and forth. Maybe you've got somebody in your office and they're starting to make you feel uncomfortable and things are kind of, the temperature's going up and you want to surreptitiously summon help. You can send a text message and say, can you send the police to this? I'm having this problem. Maybe you're on your way home and you got to go get the kids from school and you don't really have time to get involved, but you see some sketchy guy pulling on door handles and you just snap a picture and you just send it and say, hey, can't stick around, don't want to be involved, come check out this guy, he's pulling on door handles. We'll do that. So a lot of good features. And it's free, you just download it. People always ask, what if I'm off campus? Well, if you're like in the Vista, we're pretty full service. If you're in Philadelphia, we're not coming for you. But if you connect with us, we'll try to get you help wherever you are. But if you're way off campus, don't pick USC Police. Pick local 911. Now they won't give you necessarily your GPS if they don't have the software that goes with it. But it will connect you with help wherever it is that you are that 911 center is. Another question?
Two more quick questions. One,
Yeah.
at schools, we have these police officers, right? Whether or not the help is a separate story. But
Are you talking about here, like at a college, or
Yeah.
you're talking about some other
K-12
school?
schools,
Okay.
elementary
Oh, yeah.
schools.
Right, like a school resource officer.
Yeah.
Right.
So, does USC have any plans to have officers in buildings?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of officers. We've got 80 police officers who work here at USCPD.
No, but
We are not
that's
assigned
it.
to specific buildings. Yeah, so we operate much more like, and as spread out as we are, as big as we are, we're kind of like a city. If USC were a city in South Carolina, we would be like the 7th largest city in the state. So, our population, we're fairly densely situated for the most part, absent like the medical school and outbound property and, library annex and places like that. So we, right now, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, when you guys are on Christmas break, when the governor cancels work and says don't come in, we're always here. So all the time, we have police officers who are driving around campus, walking around campus, biking around campus.
But are they inside any building?
Well, I'm in a building right now. So I mean, sometimes we're in buildings, but we're not posted inside buildings. So we have a shift of officers. They work 12-hour shifts around the clock. There's a supervisor, an assistant supervisor, a number of officers. We have specialized units who are out different times. We have other people who are out and about. So I'll say we're always close. But we're not, you won't find a building really that there's an officer who sits in that building all day long. Right. Well, I take that back. The National Advocacy Center is a federal building. We have officers who are always there, but they're paying for that. So,
Sorry, one last question.
Sure.
Is it at all conceivable to add metal detectors to any of them?
Probably, not really. And the reason that's the case is for every metal detector that you have somewhere, you really have to have somebody man that metal detector. You have to have a plan for dealing with what you find with that metal detector. So really what you need there is like a police officer. When you look at the hundreds and hundreds of buildings that we have and the thousands and thousands of doors that we have, and we are a pretty open campus. We're a state university, public property. So it's really not feasible. Now, we use them at football games and certain like high, the National Advocacy Center has metal detectors and things, but it's really location specific. Yep. Yes. Yes, sir.
This is not specifically for active shooting, but I just came down from Philadelphia, and when I joined the university there, they showed us specific areas to avoid, or just not go to.
Right.
Is there something like that here as well?
We don't keep a do not go list, but I will give you one tip. If you go to our website, that sc.edu/USCPD, we do offer a modular crime map. So what you can do is you can pull up the city, you can look at our crime, you can look at the city's crime, and you can choose which crimes you want to see. If you just want to see violent crime, if you want to see all crime, and you can say, I want to see what happened last week. You can say, I want to see what happened over the last year. And when you do that, it'll give you a pretty good idea where not to go. Yep. sc.edu/USCPD. And so our crime data is available, cities is available, and there's some presentations I give, not to knock on wood when I say this, but we need something. You can pull up that crime map and say, show me all of USC's crime and show me all the city's crime, and then if you get the angle just right or the altitude just right, how big the map is, you'll see this little oasis, and that little oasis, I'm proud to say, is USC. We are one of the safer places in Columbia, but again, you guys didn't, cross the drawbridge to get here either, so we're pretty open. Yes?
I'm a criminal.
Oh, yeah.
Data question.
Sure.
Are these crimes reported or arrests or what?
Those are reported crimes. Yep.
Reported means like they have not necessarily been proven?
Correct.
So
somebody took a report that said, or somebody claimed to have been robbed, that will be on there.
Okay.
Yep.
You can also find registered sex offenders online.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to buy a house, looking at the areas. It's
Yep.
all public information.
Yep.
You can see.
Yes.
So whenever we talked about barricading doors, all of that, I get that's like first step. If there isn't an option to climb out of a window, do that sort of thing, is it your best bet to just hide, act like nobody's in there?
If you have nowhere that you can go and you can't get out and the fight hasn't come to you, then you would be better off doing that than nothing. But I would challenge you to look around at what you do have. So let's say you work in a cubicle. That's obviously you can't barricade a cubicle. But you might have a copy room or a bathroom or a closet or something that's nearby that you need to pre-plan is that's where I'm going to go barricade because my office is made of glass or I don't have 4 walls. A bathroom, almost all bathroom doors have those little A hinges. And
it's more so like my office is brick, solid metal door. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
classroom I teach in.
Gotcha.
Has one of those giant glass things in the door,
Yep.
front of the room, swings in.
Right.
And my advisor told me today she purposely tells and requests not to be in the room that I'm teaching in because of that door. And I was like, oh, that would have been nice to know before
Yeah.
I got assigned this classroom. But
Gotcha.
I'm just thinking the way the
Sure.
room's set up, let's say it's
Yep.
just that door's here with that glass, and like the only place they could look in and not see is along that wall, which doesn't
Right.
make sense. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me, and I just
Yeah.
want what would be the best option.
Yeah.
You know?
It's hard for me to envision what
Right.
you're talking about. What building is it?
Calcott.
Calcott. So why don't you, when you go to class, take a picture and or take like a panoramic or something like that, or take a picture of the door and then email it to me.
Okay.
And then I'll take a look, or if I can get over there, I'll take a look. And then, but yeah, there's probably something we can come up with.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
So do we act differently based on the type of gun that the shooter has? Because you were saying about like grabbing a gun, which
Yeah.
I think it would be
It's pretty consistent. I mean, it might be a long gun, it might be a handgun, but you definitely want to stay away from the end of it, and you want to try to control it if you get a hold of it. So
it's impossible even without being.
correct. Yep.
Just grab it.
Yep. Yes.
So if we do have a CWP, are we allowed to have a handgun on us while we're on campus?
You can't carry a gun on campus even with a concealed weapons permit because, in the statute, there are prohibited places such as government buildings, schools, private property that posts, things like that. The little carve-out that you do have is that if you have a concealed weapons permit, you can keep a gun in your vehicle. So you could carry your gun to work when you're driving down the public highway. And then when you get to work, you can leave your gun in your console, your glove box, your trunk while you go to work. And then when you come back and leave, you can arm back up. For a person without a concealed weapons permit, it would be against the law for you to have your gun in your car parked in our parking garage or in our parking lot. But for you, there's that carve out to where, because, they basically said you could have a gun on the way home. They're having people, basically breaking the law, picking up their kids on a drive-through line at the school or something. So they basically put that thing in there so you could put it in the car.
So what are the consequences if I just randomly forgot and put it
arrest.
in my bag?
Yeah, arrest if we find out. Yeah. Oh yeah. We have a pretty zero tolerance for that. So if you are unlawfully carrying a gun, that could be a concealed weapons permit carrying it where you're not supposed to carry it. It could be you don't have a concealed weapons permit and you've got it under your seat of your car. It could be that we find it in your pocket as we stop you going down the road. We're it's.
But if you do have a CWP
And you're
and
lawfully.
I had it,
Oh, it's in your bag and you have a CWP?
Correct.
Yeah, probably arrest.
Okay.
And you
Will I
will.
lose my job?
That's not for us to say. You'll probably lose your CWP though,
Oh, wow.
because they do revoke those a lot of times for violations of them. Yep. But yeah, we wouldn't get into the HR side.
Okay.
Can you, talking about the planning, can you give us a walkthrough of how we would address students if this incident were to happen while we were teaching a class? Like, how would you talk to students?
In advance or in the event, like as things are happening?
Maybe both.
Okay. So I encourage you to have that talk on, day one, or, you're going over your syllabus, you're kind of doing your day one kind of housekeeping things. You don't have to do it in a scary way. You could say, hey, I went through some training. University has some recommendations on what to do in the event of an active shooter situation. We also need to think about other possible emergencies. It could be a medical emergency. It could be a fire alarm. You can talk about, make note of where the exits are. Maybe you want to have internal to your class some type of, in the event of a fire, we're going to all go to the horseshoe and, we'll have class out there or something if there's a fire alarm. You can kind of address those things. That's a good opportunity to say, hey, any chance anybody in the room has any special training or background? Do we have any first responders or former military? If so, see me after class. We'll talk about what role you might be able to play. Do all that. You can play that 4-minute video that journalism produced, or you can play Run, Hide, Fight, or you can play, avoiddeniedefend.org has a video. You could play something like that and say, hey, this is, this is kind of part of the plan. And then, just kind of make it part of your normal spiel. You don't really have to go into anything beyond that. Now, in the event of something actually happening, hopefully you've kind of given them the benefit of the preparation of having had that discussion ahead of time, in which case, let's say you get a Carolina Alert, and the Carolina Alert says, where do you normally teach?
I'm still learning right now in Hamilton or Barnwell.
Okay, so let's say you're in Barnwell, and you get a Carolina Alert that there is a suspect with a gun spotted in Gibbs Green, right outside your classroom. So you could potentially leave that building and end up in that space, right? So maybe at that point you say, hey, we're just gonna, as a precaution, barricade up the doors or lock the doors or whatever, in which case just do that and keep on teaching. But at least you've kind of given yourself some, maybe you say, because of the location or some specificity of where the threat is, maybe it's a little further away. Maybe you decide, hey, you know what, we're just gonna cancel class. here's your homework, or I'll send you out an email later. Go someplace else, avoid this area that they just put the alert out on, go back to your residence hall or go back to your car and drive home. And you just want to play it easy like that. Let's say things are encroaching on you a little bit and maybe you don't have the benefit of warning where there is no Carolina alert because the problem is going to be happening when you find out that the problem is happening. So you're in the middle of teaching and maybe you have doors open or maybe you have doors closed and you hear what sounds like gunshots or you hear what sounds like fireworks or you hear what sounds like some other potentially benign thing that is actually gunfire. I always ask the class, has anybody here ever been in a professional environment where somebody set off fireworks in your office or your classroom, anything like that?